The crystal walls of the council chamber shimmered under distant starlight as representatives from 47 civilizations gathered for an emergency session. Ambassador Thomas Blake stood quietly at the human delegation platform, his posture straight and disciplined, watching the chaos unfold around him. Premier Valen, a being made entirely of translucent crystal, pulsed with agitation as he addressed the assembled council. The Vraxian collective had invaded 3 peaceful colony worlds belonging to the Lithani species. 4 weeks, the council had debated sanctions, discussed diplomatic resolutions, and proposed champion duels to settle the territorial dispute. Nothing had worked. The Vraxians had simply fortified their positions on the conquered worlds and dared anyone to remove them. Their general, a massive tusked warrior named Crix, appeared via hologram with barely concealed contempt for the proceedings. He knew the council feared direct military confrontation. The Vraxians were too powerful, too well entrenched. Thomas raised his hand to speak. The chamber gradually fell silent as curious eyes turned toward the human representative. Humanity was new to galactic society, admitted only after 50 years of careful observation. Many species still viewed humans with suspicion. The human delegation volunteers to defend the Lithani worlds, Thomas said calmly. We will restore their sovereignty and remove the Vraxian occupation forces. For a moment, silence filled the chamber. Then laughter erupted. Not cruel laughter, but the confused amusement of those hearing something absurd. Councillor Thrace, representing a peaceful trading confederation, spoke up with genuine concern in her voice. Ambassador Blake, we appreciate your species' enthusiasm, but the Vraxians command 300 warships. They have fortified positions on all 3 worlds. Your fleet is, well, modest by comparison. How exactly do you propose to accomplish this? Thomas allowed himself a small smile. We will fight them on the ground. The laughter died instantly, replaced by confused murmuring. Several councillors checked their translation devices, certain they had misheard. General Crix's hologram flickered with his sudden movement. Ground forces? Against defensive fortifications? His tusks gleamed as he grinned. Human, when was the last time your species studied actual military history? The civilized galaxy abandoned primitive surface warfare 10,000 years ago for good reason. Orbital bombardment is precise. Champion duels are honorable. But sending soldiers to crawl through dirt and die in trenches? That is barbarism. 12 years ago, Thomas replied evenly. I was teaching ground warfare at the Earth Military Academy. Before that, I spent 20 years practicing it in actual combat. The chamber fell completely silent now. Crix's amusement faded into confusion. Impossible, the Vraxian general said flatly. The Galactic Accords forbid surface military operations. You cannot have combat experience in tactics that have been banned for 8 millennia. The Accords came into force 8,000 years before humanity achieved faster-than-light travel, General. We were not here to sign them. Thomas's voice remained calm, but his eyes grew cold. We never stopped fighting our wars the traditional way. We never forgot how. Premier Valen's crystalline form flickered with uncertainty. This is precisely why your species underwent such lengthy observation before admission, Ambassador Blake. Your history of warfare troubled us deeply. We had hoped contact with galactic civilization would civilize your violent tendencies. It has, Thomas said. We now choose our battles carefully. And we choose this one. Councillor Thrace leaned forward, her multiple appendages gesturing diplomatically. Even if we permitted this intervention, what makes you believe ground forces can succeed where orbital superiority has failed? The Vraxians have shield generators protecting their positions. They have anti-orbital batteries. Their defenses are perfect. Thomas activated a holographic display showing the occupied Lithani worlds. Their defenses are perfect for space-based threats. But they have forgotten how to fight an enemy that can actually reach them on the surface. They have fortified cities, yes, but they have no experience with combined arms warfare, urban combat tactics, or maneuver operations. They are preparing for a battle in space while we will fight them on the ground. General Crix snorted with derision. Your transports will be destroyed before they reach atmosphere. No, Thomas corrected. We will establish air superiority, suppress defensive positions, insert special teams to disable shields, secure landing zones, and then bring in armored units with infantry support. We will isolate their forces, cut their supply lines, and force surrender through superior tactics. The council members stared blankly at him. The terms meant nothing to them. Air superiority? Armored units? Infantry support? These were concepts from ancient history texts, not modern military doctrine. I do not understand any of those words, Premier Valen admitted slowly. Thomas's smile turned sharp. You will, Premier. The whole galaxy will understand soon enough. General Crix's hologram leaned forward, his expression now serious rather than amused. You truly believe you can defeat entrenched forces with these primitive methods? We know we can, Thomas said simply. Because we have been doing it to each other for thousands of years. We perfected warfare while you forgot it existed. The vote was called. Despite reservations, despite fears, despite confusion, the council approved the human intervention. They had nothing else to offer the desperate Lithani people, and at least the humans were willing to try. As the session ended and representatives filed out, Councillor Thrace approached Thomas privately. Ambassador, many of us are frightened by what your species might do. We have lived in peace for so long. Thomas nodded understanding. We frighten ourselves sometimes, Councillor. But we learned something important through all our wars. Sometimes the only way to protect peace is to be capable of war. We became good at fighting so we could finally stop doing it. He looked toward the holographic display of the suffering Lithani worlds. Someone has to help them. Everyone else just talks. We act. Across the galaxy, on human military vessels, preparations began. Soldiers checked equipment that looked primitive to galactic observers. Rifles that fired physical bullets. Armored vehicles with treads. Artillery that hurled explosive shells. The aliens watching wondered how such crude technology could possibly work. They would soon learn that humanity had spent millennia making crude technology devastatingly effective. The Vraxians had never faced an enemy like this. Neither had anyone else in the galaxy. The humans were going to war, and the universe had forgotten what that truly meant. The training grounds aboard the human carrier Resolution buzzed with constant activity. Soldiers moved in coordinated groups while alien volunteers struggled to keep pace with drills that seemed chaotic to their inexperienced eyes. Sergeant William Hayes stood beside a young Lithani recruit named Nolan, who crouched behind a concrete barrier looking confused and terrified. William's voice was firm but patient as he corrected the alien's positioning. Keep your head down. That wall is cover, use it properly. If you stand in the open like you are watching a parade, you will be dead in 3 seconds. William demonstrated the correct posture, staying low and protected. The Vraxians are inside buildings. We go in and clear them room by room. 2 soldiers work together, check every corner, watch for ambushes. Move fast but carefully. Your partner protects your weak spots. You protect theirs. Nolan's chitinous features twisted as he tried to understand these foreign concepts. In Lithani culture, violence was almost unknown. Now he was learning to fight with weapons and tactics that seemed impossibly complex. On an adjacent field, Lieutenant David Cross supervised weapons training. Coalition volunteers from a dozen species struggled with human rifles. The weapons kicked hard when fired, propelling solid metal projectiles through explosive force rather than energy beams. Most aliens had never experienced such violent recoil. Why are these weapons so brutal? Asked Grace, a 6-armed Harmonite whose entire species had been pacifist for thousands of years. Her arms trembled as she fired downrange. Because brutal is effective, David replied without apology. Energy weapons are clean and precise. These rifles are meant to punch through cover, suppress enemy positions, and make your opponent afraid. War is not clean, Grace. War is about making the other side stop fighting, and sometimes fear works better than precision. In the command center, General Rebecca Stone met with her senior officers around a holographic display of their first target world. Major Catherine Ellis pointed to red markers indicating enemy positions throughout the capital city. 15,000 Vraxian troops in fortified buildings. Anti-aircraft batteries on every rooftop. Shield generators protecting their headquarters. A direct assault would cost us thousands of casualties. Then we do not assault directly, Rebecca said calmly. She manipulated the display to show terrain outside the city. We insert special operations teams at night through the northern forest. They eliminate observation posts quietly, map enemy patrol patterns, and find weaknesses. Once we have good intelligence, we bring in the main force. Colonel Robert Shaw nodded approvingly. The Vraxians are watching the sky for orbital attacks. They are not expecting us to walk through their front door. Exactly, Rebecca confirmed. Catherine, your rangers go in first. Stay invisible, gather information, and prepare the battlefield. The Vraxians have never fought an enemy that approaches on foot. That gives us a tremendous advantage. Commander Peter Grant looked concerned. The Council observation drones will broadcast everything we do. The entire galaxy will watch. Rebecca smiled coldly. Good. Let them watch us prepare properly. Let them see discipline and planning. And when we strike, let them understand why humanity spent 10,000 years perfecting ground warfare. Throughout the fleet, similar training continued on every ship. Human veterans taught alien volunteers concepts that seemed strange and violent. Flanking maneuvers. Suppressive fire. Combined arms tactics. Urban warfare. The aliens struggled to understand how all these elements could work together. In the medical bay, Dr. Helen Carter briefed her staff on battlefield medicine. Forget everything you know about treating casualties in space combat. We will not have stasis fields or automated medical drones. You will work in field hospitals under enemy fire with limited supplies. Your job is keeping wounded soldiers alive long enough to reach proper facilities. A young human medic named Oliver raised his hand nervously. Dr. Carter, the Lithani have completely different biology from humans. How do we treat their injuries? You learn quickly, Helen said firmly. We have Lithani medical consultants with every unit. Ask questions, memorize the answers, and remember that perfect treatment is impossible. Your goal is survival, not perfection. In the massive hangar bays, technicians prepared vehicles that amazed the alien observers. Tanks with thick armor plating and massive cannons. Infantry fighting vehicles bristling with weapons. Artillery pieces mounted on tracked chassis. To species that only knew space combat, these ground vehicles seemed like mobile fortresses from ancient history. Marcus, a Lithani engineer, stared at a tank with fascination mixed with horror. These machines are like fortresses that move. These are breakthrough weapons, corrected Sargent and Foster, patting the tank's armored hull. Tanks do not defend positions. They attack them. They absorb enemy fire, deliver overwhelming firepower, and create openings for infantry to exploit. Armor and infantry support each other. That coordination makes us effective. The Galactic Council watched these preparations with growing alarm. Premier Valen convened another emergency session with concern evident in his crystalline form. What are we witnessing? Councillor Thrace demanded. These weapons and tactics are designed purely for killing on a massive scale. This is barbaric. Ambassador Thomas Blake stood calmly at the human platform. That is war, Councillor. The kind of war you all forgot how to fight. The kind humanity never stopped fighting. Surely there must be a more civilized approach, Thrace protested weakly. There is not, Thomas interrupted. The Vraxians conquered 3 worlds through force. They fortified positions and challenged anyone to remove them. Your orbital bombardments failed because they dug underground. Your sanctions failed because they do not care about your disapproval. Sometimes, Councillor, the only way to stop a bully is hitting them harder than they have ever been hit before. Premier Valen's form pulsed with anxiety. And if your forces fail? If this experiment in primitive warfare accomplishes nothing except casualties? Thomas met the Premier's gaze steadily. Then we will have tried, which is more than anyone else was willing to do. On the surface of Veshtar, the occupied Lithani world, General Crix reviewed intelligence reports with growing irritation. The human fleet had arrived at the system's edge but made no move to advance into weapons range. What are they waiting for? He demanded from his command center deep within the fortified capital. Commander Voss studied the sensor readings with confusion. Unknown, General. They appear to be conducting training exercises inside their own ships. Why would they practice after arriving at the battlefield? Crix laughed harshly. They waste time teaching recruits? These humans are even more foolish than I thought. Let them train. Our defenses are impregnable. But deep in the forest north of the capital, 5 figures moved through darkness like ghosts. Captain James Mitchell led his ranger team through dense undergrowth, each footstep placed carefully to avoid noise. Behind him, his team maintained perfect spacing and communicated only through hand signals. They reached a Vraxian observation post on a small hill overlooking the forest. 2 sentries stood watch, bored after weeks of seeing nothing but empty trees. They chatted casually about home, never imagining an enemy could approach undetected through terrain their senses covered. James raised his fist in a stop signal. He pointed silently to assigned positions. His team moved like shadows through the darkness. The sentries never heard them coming. One moment they were talking about their next meal. The next moment they were unconscious on the ground, bound and gagged. Observation post secured, James whispered into his encrypted communicator. No casualties. Beginning reconnaissance. From the resolution, General Rebecca watched the feed from James's helmet camera. First blood to the Rangers. Mark that position as secure and proceed to the next objective. All across the northern forest, 20 Ranger teams executed identical operations. By dawn, 17 Vraxian observation posts had gone silent, their crews captured without a single shot fired. The Vraxians had lost their eyes on the northern approach without even knowing it. Northern sector is clear, Major Catherine reported to Rebecca. Landing zones are marked. Reconnaissance complete. The Vraxians are blind on that entire side. Rebecca studied the tactical display showing green zones where her forces could land unopposed. Everything proceeded exactly according to plan. Order the fleet to advance. Show the galaxy what humanity brought to the stars. As human warships began their approach, General Crix finally received alarm notifications from his northern observation posts. No responses from any of them. 17 posts, all silent simultaneously. Send reconnaissance drones to those positions immediately, he ordered, but even as he spoke, cold uncertainty crept into his thoughts. The humans were not attacking like any enemy he had studied. They made no demands, issued no challenges, and showed no obvious assault preparations. They were simply disappearing his sentries without trace. For the first time in his long military career, General Crix felt like prey being hunted by a predator he could not see. The attack began at sunrise. Human fighter aircraft screamed over the forest at terrifyingly low altitude, barely 50 meters above the treetops. They moved so fast and so low that the Vraxian anti-aircraft batteries designed to shoot down orbital threats could not track them properly. Missiles launched from the human aircraft, striking the Vraxian air defense positions with devastating accuracy. Sophisticated sensor arrays exploded into flames. Defense batteries twisted into smoking wreckage. Within minutes, the Vraxians lost their ability to protect the sky above their heads. Air defense is destroyed in sectors 7 through 12. Commander Voss shouted over the chaos in the Vraxian command center. General, they are not attacking from space. They are attacking from the ground. General Crix stared at his tactical display in disbelief. Red warning symbols appeared across his northern perimeter. Impossible. We control all landing zones. How did they get forces on the surface? They did not use landing zones, sir. They came through the forest on foot during the night. Our sensors never detected them. Before Crix could respond, explosions began rocking the city. Artillery shells arced through the morning sky and crashed into Vraxian fortifications. The bombardment was not meant to destroy the buildings completely but to keep defenders pinned down and terrified. General Rebecca watched the battle unfold from the Resolution while council observers stood beside her in stunned silence. That is suppressive fire, she explained calmly. We are not trying to kill everyone with artillery. We are keeping them inside their bunkers while our ground forces move into position. This is madness, Premier Valen whispered, watching the coordinated chaos. How do you control so many different elements simultaneously? Practice, Rebecca said simply. Thousands of years of practice. The first human tanks emerged from the forest like mechanical monsters. The council observation drones captured images that shocked the watching galaxy. Massive armored vehicles with treads that chewed up Earth, cannons that swiveled with mechanical precision toward targets. Behind them, infantry fighting vehicles released soldiers who immediately spread into tactical formations that looked chaotic but were perfectly coordinated. Lieutenant David Cross led his company through the city outskirts. First platoon, secure that intersection. Second platoon, follow me to the left side. Third platoon, get into that building and watch our backs. Move now. His soldiers flowed through the urban streets like water finding cracks in stone. They used buildings for cover, moved in quick rushes while others provided covering fire, and cleared structures with an efficiency that amazed the alien volunteers fighting alongside them. Nolan, the young Lithani recruit, pressed himself against a wall while bullets snapped through the air above his head. Physical projectiles that made terrifying sounds. Sergeant William Hayes crouched beside him, completely calm despite the chaos. This is war, kid, William said steadily. Scary, right? I thought we would be safer behind our own lines, Nolan stammered. There are no safe lines in ground combat, William said. But training keeps you alive. Watch this. He leaned around the corner and fired 3 quick bursts, then pulled back as return fire chewed chunks from the wall. I just forced them to keep their heads down. Now Oliver's squad can move around from that side street and catch them from a different angle. See? Just as William predicted, another human squad appeared from an alley and caught the Vraxian defenders in crossfire from 2 directions. Overwhelmed and confused, The aliens immediately surrendered, dropping their weapons. "We take prisoners when possible," William explained as he secured the captured Vraxians with plastic restraints. "Wars end eventually, kid. No point creating more enemies than necessary." In the Vraxian command center, General Crix watched his tactical display fill with red enemy markers. His defensive positions were not being overrun by direct assault. Instead, humans were systematically cutting each position off from the others. Every time he sent reinforcements to one location, humans attacked somewhere else. "They are isolating us," he realized with growing horror. "They are not trying to storm our fortifications. They are cutting us apart piece by piece so we cannot support each other. How are they coordinating all this?" The answer lay with Captain James Mitchell's Rangers, who had infiltrated to within 500 meters of the command center itself. Using portable jamming equipment, they created dead zones in the Vraxian communications network. Units could not talk to each other or receive orders from headquarters. "Command center located," James reported quietly. "Their shields are still active, but we have marked coordinates for artillery." Rebecca studied the incoming data. "Hold your position, Ranger 1. I want that command center intact if we can manage it. Let us try convincing them to surrender first." She opened a direct communication channel. General Crix's face appeared on her screen, his tusks bared in rage and confusion. "General Crix, this is General Rebecca Stone of the Human Expeditionary Force. Your positions are isolated. Your communications are compromised. Your defensive perimeter has collapsed. I am offering you one chance to surrender and save your soldiers' lives." "Never!" Crix roared. "We are Vraxian warriors. We do not surrender to primitives who crawl in dirt." "You are Vraxian soldiers trapped in boxes while my forces cut you apart," Rebecca interrupted coldly. "You prepared for orbital assault for so long that you forgot what real ground warfare looks like. I have tanks in your streets, infantry clearing your buildings, and artillery that can flatten your command center from positions you cannot even reach. Your shields will fail in 6 hours. Your food runs out in 3 days. Your soldiers are already breaking." She leaned forward. "Or you can surrender now, return these worlds to the Lithani people, and go home alive. Choose quickly, General. My patience has limits." Crix closed the channel, but Rebecca saw the doubt in his eyes. She turned to her staff. "Continue the advance. Show them we are winning, but minimize casualties. I want him scared, not desperate enough to do something stupid." The battle became a demonstration of combined arms warfare that the galaxy had never witnessed. Tanks eliminated fortified positions with their cannons. Infantry cleared buildings using room-by-room tactics. Artillery provided precise fire support directed by forward observers. Aircraft maintained air superiority and prevented Vraxian reinforcements. "They are not mindless berserkers," Councillor Thrace observed quietly. "This is organized. Disciplined. Professional. This is what happens when a species spends its entire history learning efficient warfare," Ambassador Thomas said. "We got very good at fighting because we had to survive each other. Now we are good enough to win with minimal casualties on both sides." By sunset, Crix's command center was surrounded. His fortifications still stood, but they were isolated islands in a sea of human-controlled territory. His soldiers could not communicate, could not reinforce each other, could not even safely leave their positions without being captured. Rebecca's offer came again. "General Crix. Final chance. Surrender now, or we bring that building down around your head." Crix looked at his officers and at the tactical displays showing nothing but enemy positions everywhere. He thought about his trapped soldiers. He thought about his pride and honor. Then he thought about dying for nothing in a war already lost. "We surrender," he said quietly. 36 hours after the first human soldier landed on Veshtar, the Vraxian garrison laid down their weapons. Human casualties were 43 wounded and 3 killed. Vraxian casualties were over 200 dead, 500 wounded, and 15,000 captured. The Galactic Council watched in stunned silence as human soldiers processed prisoners with professional courtesy and established field hospitals that treated wounded from both sides equally. "Impossible," Premier Vallin whispered. "They took a fortified world in less than 2 days. How?" An ancient counselor who remembered the wars before the Accord spoke softly. "Because they remembered what we spent 10,000 years trying to forget. That sometimes, the only way to win a war is to actually fight it properly." The liberation of Veshtar sent shockwaves across the entire galaxy. Within hours, 17 different species requested human military advisors. Within days, the Vraxian collective went ominously silent. That silence worried General Rebecca Stone more than any threat could. They are regrouping and learning, she told her officers aboard the Resolution as they traveled toward the second occupied world. General Crix is not stupid. He will study everything we did, adapt his tactics, and prepare for the next fight. Let them adapt, Colonel Robert Shaw said confidently. We have 5,000 years of tactical evolution. They have 1 week to figure out ground warfare. Never underestimate an enemy who learns from defeat, Rebecca warned. The most dangerous opponent is one who has been beaten once and refuses to lose again. Her words proved prophetic. When the human fleet approached Kethra Prime, the Lithani homeworld, they found something unexpected. The Vraxians had abandoned their fortified city positions and established defensive lines in open terrain around the capital. 30,000 elite troops under General Crix himself, who had requested the chance to redeem his honor. Major Catherine Ellis studied the new Vraxian positions with concern. They have been learning from us. Look at this. Overlapping fields of fire. Dispersed units instead of concentrated garrisons. Prepared fighting positions with good cover. They are trying to fight us using our own methods. They are learning quickly, Rebecca acknowledged. But copying techniques is not enough. Real military skill requires institutional knowledge, years of training, and combat experience they simply do not have yet. Lieutenant David Cross led the first probing attack against the Vraxian defensive lines. His company advanced across open ground with armor and artillery support, but Vraxian forces opened fire from well-prepared positions that showed genuine tactical understanding. They definitely learned something, David reported as his soldiers took cover behind ridges and walls. They have overlapping fire zones. They are using indirect fire support. They are not panicking like before. Request permission to withdraw and reassess the situation. Granted, Rebecca replied calmly. Pull back to the rally point. Let them think they won a small victory. The council observers watching the battle feeds looked confused. General Stone, your forces had superior numbers at that position. Why retreat? Because I refuse to grind through their defenses at the cost of my soldiers' lives, Rebecca explained. They want us to attack their prepared positions head-on? We will make them come to us instead. What followed demonstrated maneuver warfare at a level the galaxy had never witnessed. Human forces did not assault the Vraxian defensive lines. Instead, they bypassed them completely using rapid mechanized movements to seize critical infrastructure behind the defensive positions. Within 12 hours, human armored columns had captured the planetary power stations, water treatment facilities, and supply depots. Aerospace forces destroyed Vraxian supply convoys on the roads. The carefully prepared Vraxian defensive lines suddenly found themselves cut off from resupply and surrounded from behind. General Crix stared at his tactical display in frustration. Red enemy markers appeared behind his positions. They refused to fight the battle I prepared for. Commander Voss, who had spent his captivity studying human tactics, spoke quietly. That is the nature of maneuver warfare, General. They do not fight the battle you want. They fight the battle that achieves victory with minimum cost. Then we abandon these positions and retake our supply bases, Crix decided. That is exactly what they want, sir, Voss warned. The moment we leave prepared defenses, we become vulnerable to their armor and artillery in open terrain where they have every advantage. Crix realized the trap. Stay in position and slowly starve, or advance into open ground where human firepower would devastate his forces. Both options were terrible. He chose to attack anyway, hoping Vraxian courage could overcome human tactical superiority. The Vraxian forces abandoned their defensive lines and marched toward their captured supply bases. Instead of the decisive battle they expected, they walked into a carefully planned ambush. Human forces had established defense in depth, multiple lines of resistance designed to slow and damage the advancing enemy. Artillery shells rained down on Vraxian formations. Tanks engaged from protected positions on high ground, firing and then moving before the Vraxians could respond effectively. Infantry units struck at flanks using hit-and-run tactics, attacking and withdrawing before reinforcements arrived. This is called a fighting retreat, Rebecca explained to increasingly disturbed council observers. We are not trying to stop them completely. We are bleeding them slowly. Every kilometer they advance costs casualties and exhaustion, while our forces remain fresh and mobile. Sergeant William Hayes found himself fighting alongside Nolan again, this time in a defensive position on a rocky ridgeline overlooking the Vraxian advance. They are learning much faster than I expected, William admitted, watching Vraxian forces advance with better spacing and coordination. But learning tactics from books takes weeks. Learning how to execute them properly under fire takes years of practice. His observation proved accurate when a Vraxian unit attempted a flanking maneuver but executed it too slowly and obviously. Human forces spotted the movement, repositioned their defenses, and ambushed the flanking force. The Vraxians had the right tactical idea but lacked the experience to implement it effectively against a skilled opponent. The battle for Kethra Prime lasted 6 brutal days. General Crix's forces, exhausted and running low on supplies, finally surrendered when they realized they were completely surrounded and cut off from all support. When Rebecca accepted the surrender, Crix asked a different question than before. Why show us mercy? You could destroy us completely. You have proven that capability. Why let us live? Rebecca considered the question seriously. Because war is not about killing, General. War is about achieving objectives. My objective was freeing Lithani worlds, not exterminating Vraxians. You are defeated. That is sufficient. She paused thoughtfully. Besides, dead enemies teach no lessons to anyone. Living enemies who remember what happened here? They tell others what happens when they cross lines that should never be crossed. As Vraxian prisoners were processed, delegations from peaceful species arrived at the human fleet. A Harmonite representative named Grace spoke nervously to Rebecca. General Stone, my people have been pacifists for thousands of years. But watching you fight makes us wonder if we have been dangerously naive. Would you teach us defensive warfare? Not to attack others, but to ensure we are never helpless victims again. Similar requests came from a dozen species. Even militant council members wanted to learn human military methods after seeing their devastating effectiveness. Ambassador Thomas addressed the council directly. You are asking us to share knowledge that cost humanity 10,000 years and billions of lives to develop. That is not a decision we make lightly. He looked around the chamber. We agree to 2 conditions. First, we establish a galactic defense force under joint command with human officers training mixed species units. Second, this force exists purely for defense. No wars of aggression, no conquest, no attacks without council approval. And if we refuse? Premier Valen asked. Then we continue defending our allies individually, and the galaxy remains divided between species who know warfare and species who do not. That creates exactly the kind of instability you are trying to prevent. The council debated for 3 days while human forces liberated the third Lithani world in barely 18 hours. When the debate finally ended, the vote was unanimous. The Galactic Defense Force would be established under joint command with human military leadership. One more thing, Thomas said as the vote was recorded. The Vraxian collective has been suspiciously silent. That concerns me deeply. Why? Councillor Thrace asked. They have been defeated. Surely they will accept peace now. No, Thomas said firmly. They have been humiliated. Defeated enemies can become allies eventually. Humiliated enemies obsess over revenge. We need to address this before it becomes a much larger problem. But intelligence reports were already arriving that confirmed his worst fears. The Vraxian collective had not been idle during their silence. They had been studying, adapting, and planning. And they had reached a terrifying conclusion. If they could not defeat humanity conventionally, they would need to eliminate humanity entirely before this galactic defense force could be fully established. The warning came from an unexpected source. Commander Voss, the Vraxian officer who had surrendered on Veshtar, requested an urgent private meeting with General Rebecca Stone. His translator conveyed the desperation in his voice. General, I must warn you about something terrible. The High Command has been silent because they are planning something extreme. There are factions in our government who believe humanity poses an existential threat to Vraxian power. They do not want peace. They want your complete elimination. Rebecca's expression turned cold and hard. You are telling me they plan to attack Earth and all human colonies? A simultaneous strike using every available warship, Voss confirmed grimly. They believe if they can destroy humanity before you establish this galactic defense force, they can return to the old order where military power meant only fleet superiority. Ambassador Thomas immediately brought this intelligence to the Galactic Council, sparking fierce debate among the representatives. We should send diplomats, Councillor Thrace insisted. Surely if we explain that humanity's military knowledge will be shared equally with all species, they will understand there is no threat. They do not want shared knowledge, Thomas interrupted sharply. They want to be the strongest species in the galaxy, and we prove they are not. No diplomacy changes that fundamental reality. Then what do you propose? Premier Valen asked carefully. A preemptive attack on the Vraxian homeworld? Absolutely not, Thomas said firmly. We propose a demonstration that makes it completely clear why attacking humanity would be absolute suicide, without firing a single shot in anger. What followed became the largest military exercise in galactic history. Every human warship, along with newly formed Galactic Defense Force units, converged on the Vraxian home system. Not to invade, but to establish a complete blockade. The message was unmistakably clear to everyone watching. Humanity could reach the Vraxian homeworld, could isolate it completely, and could do so without any apparent effort. Simultaneously, human forces invited Vraxian military observers to witness a full-scale training exercise on a designated world. General Crix, who had been officially pardoned as a gesture of reconciliation, attended personally with other senior officers. What they witnessed made their blood run cold with fear. Human forces demonstrated the complete spectrum of military capability. Orbital insertions, naval boarding actions, electronic warfare, strategic bombing, chemical decontamination, amphibious assaults, and most terrifyingly, the ability to coordinate all these elements simultaneously across multiple battle zones with perfect precision. This is only a fraction of our true capability, Rebecca explained to Crix as they watched entire divisions maneuver like a single organism. We are showing you conventional warfare methods. We are deliberately not showing you our weapons of last resort. The ones we developed during our darkest periods and swore never to use again unless absolutely necessary for survival. She turned to face him directly, her eyes hard as steel. General, humanity possesses weapons that can crack planets open. Biological weapons that can sterilize entire continents. Autonomous AI weapons that require no human operators. We developed all these horrors during our wars against ourselves, and we locked them in vaults because we finally understood what monsters we had become. Her voice dropped to a deadly whisper. But if your high command forces us to fight for our very survival, we will open those vaults. We will use everything at our disposal to ensure humanity continues to exist, even if it means becoming the demons we spent centuries trying to leave behind. Crix understood the message with perfect clarity. Humanity was offering a stark choice: join the new galactic order as equals and partners, or face an enemy that had already proven it would sacrifice anything, including its own soul, to survive. He returned to the Vraxian collective and delivered his report to the assembled high command. The generals and politicians listened in absolute silence as he described everything he had witnessed during the exercise. We cannot win, Crix concluded with finality. Not conventionally, not through surprise attack, not through any scenario I can possibly imagine. The humans spent thousands of years fighting opponents who knew all their techniques because those opponents were other humans. They have evolved tactics for literally every possible situation because they have already tried everything against themselves. He paused, choosing his words carefully. But more importantly than their capability, they have shown remarkable restraint. They captured our soldiers and treated them with dignity and respect. They defeated us utterly and then offered genuine peace. They are giving us a real choice: accept partnership as equals or face complete annihilation. And you believe we should accept this partnership? Asked High Chancellor Torvin skeptically. I believe we should recognize reality before reality destroys us, Crix replied bluntly. The humans did not ask to be the strongest military power in the galaxy. They simply are, through thousands of years of brutal experience. We can fight that reality and be destroyed, or we can adapt to it and benefit from the stability it offers. The Vraxian High Command debated intensely for 5 days. Some hardline factions still argued passionately for war, insisting that Vraxian honor demanded resistance against humiliation. But Crix's words, combined with the sight of the human blockade completely surrounding their home system, finally tipped the balance toward reason. The Vraxian collective formally agreed to join the Galactic Defense Force as full partners, integrating their forces into the new command structure under human military doctrine and joint leadership. The announcement shocked the entire galaxy. The species that had triggered this entire crisis through aggression was now joining the solution as a partner rather than a conquered enemy. Ambassador Thomas addressed the Galactic Council one final time as the charter for the Galactic Defense Force was being officially ratified. You asked why we marched into battle when everyone else voted for sanctions and debates, he began, looking around at the assembled representatives. It is because we learned, through incredibly painful experience, that evil triumphs when good people do nothing but talk. The Vraxians conquered 3 worlds, enslaved millions of innocent people, and dared anyone to stop them. You debated endlessly. We acted decisively. He gestured broadly to include all the representatives. But we also learned something equally important. Winning the war is only half of any conflict. Winning the peace afterward requires mercy, requires teaching rather than punishing, requires offering your enemies a better path forward than the one they were following. General Crick stands here today not as our prisoner, but as our colleague and partner. The Vraxian military is integrating with the defense force not as conquered subjects, but as equal partners in maintaining galactic stability. Because we remembered something crucial, today's enemy can become tomorrow's trusted ally, if you give them genuine reasons to change their path. Thomas paused, making eye contact with representatives throughout the chamber. Some of you feared us. Many still do. That is completely understandable because we are exceptionally skilled at violence. But what makes humanity truly dangerous is not our capacity for war. It is our capacity to choose peace despite having overwhelming military capability. It is our willingness to extend hands to defeated enemies. It is our commitment to share knowledge that cost us millennia of suffering to develop, because we understand that a galaxy where everyone can defend themselves is ultimately safer than one where only a few species possess military power. Premier Valin stood, his crystalline form pulsing with emotion. Ambassador Blake, what does humanity ultimately want? You have proven your overwhelming strength. You have established yourselves as the preeminent military power. What is your final goal? Thomas smiled warmly. The same thing we have always wanted, Premier. To explore this magnificent universe, make friends among the stars, share discoveries, and live in peace. We just happen to be extremely good at defending that peace when defense becomes necessary. The charter was ratified unanimously by all 47 civilizations. The Galactic Defense Force was officially established with Rebecca Stone as its first supreme commander, but with deputy commanders carefully selected from multiple species, including Vraxian General Crix as deputy commander of ground operations. On the liberated Lithani worlds, human engineers worked side by side with aliens rebuilding everything that war had destroyed. Nolan, the young Lithani who had trained under Sergeant William Hayes, was now training other Lithani in defensive tactics and leadership. Why teach us to fight? Nolan asked William during a break. We are naturally peaceful people. We prefer diplomacy to violence. So do we, kid, William replied honestly. But the universe is not always diplomatic or reasonable. Sometimes genuinely bad people do terrible things, and someone must stand up and stop them. That does not mean you become warlike or aggressive. It means you become capable of defending what truly matters. He gestured to the rebuilt city around them. Your people survived and are free because someone was willing to fight for you when words failed. Now we teach you to fight for yourselves, so you are never helpless victims again. That is not aggression. That is dignity and self-respect. Years later, a monument was unveiled on Lithani Prime showing a human soldier and a Lithani child. The soldier's rifle pointed downward, while extending a hand to help the child stand tall. The inscription read simply, "They marched into battle so others would not have to. They won wars so peace could flourish. They became warriors so their children could be dreamers."